Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and Ashley Buckholt dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. Episode number 91. We were a day late because of a 3-day weekend, which has actually worked out and going to serve us really well for this conversation. We got Charles DeLaTorre from Industrial Forest Products with us today, Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and myself. Welcome back, boys. I'm glad we did not record what we just talked about for the last 10 minutes.
Yeah,
I missed all that.
That missed the whole thing, so it's okay.
Yeah,
We can go at it again.
No, we can maybe slowly dip our toes into that one as we go here. So I think it was a great. I had a lot of calls this morning wanting people wanting to find our podcast, saying, "Hey, I didn't see your podcast yesterday." I'm like, Gregg was talking the other day. I was like, this was perfect the way everything went down in the last 24 hours and the 3-day weekend to start it today. So just kind of a brief market commentary. It felt last week going into the long weekend that things were starting to slow like they normally do this time of year. We had talked about it. Weren't sure. We were able to buy some lumber at some of the mills that we talked to in the East. Pretty decent discounts to what the ask price was. Thought we were stupid actually doing it with some of the discounts that we paid, questioned our manhood.
Whoa. I didn't remember ever thinking I was stupid. I thought it was genius, but it looked like more like genius today.
That's a good point. So and going into the weekend, weren't sure. And then all of a sudden last night, I'm sitting out having dinner on the deck. I get an email and Canfor announces 2 mills, Fort St. John, Plateau, closing 677 million board feet annually. I mean, the worst thing is it's 500 employees, right? I mean, which is not a good thing. That's a tough situation for everybody involved. But I think we're going to see more of that. And then,
the crazy thing, Ash, is when, when we looked at the other day, like BC production is down like 50% in 5 years. I was like, geez, I didn't think they could cut anymore, but I guess they can.
Yeah, it's starting to add up. And then, I went back and looked at some stuff and I saw where Canfor also announced Darlington, South Carolina, Estill, and Moultrie are all one of them's going to one shift. The other ones are reducing operations. That's 215 million board feet annualized of pine. I mean, this is starting to add up. So, we came in this morning, boards up out of the gate, the CME, called some mills to find out, countered some mills just to see where they're at. Everything was basically firm. I wouldn't say, Matt, Gregg, it wasn't higher than it was last week. It was back to the original ask prices across the board from what I saw today. Just from did you guys see anything different at all? It seemed like a lot of people kind of waited to do anything. I don't know how much lumber was actually traded today.
I think there's been lumber traded over here. We're feeling pretty good. I think about our inventory and about the mills. We've been able to keep our order files out, and now we're continuing to extend order file on the dry Hem Fir and the dry Doug fir. Dry Doug fir has become, when the Canadians aren't pumping out a lot of dry Doug fir, it allows the Western mills to have a little bit of room to breathe.
Yeah.
And then, you look at Oregon specifically, we've lost a few mills this year. We lost the GP Philomath mill. We lost Malheur. I think Blue Mountain's going down, but I'm not sure if that's 100% determined yet. But I mean, there's a couple other ones that don't exist anymore. C&D lumber, that one had been around for 130 years. Those guys made a lot of green Doug fir timbers and fancy lumber. So what you're seeing out west is Doug fir is becoming more niche-y and less commodity. And then Hem Fir is stepping in and filling in some gaps where spruce might otherwise. This is the time of year between now and say next spring where guys in warmer areas will buy Hem Fir instead of spruce if it's a better value. So things are just kind of clicking along over here, just the way we hoped. I mean, obviously the announcement yesterday is having a benefit.
Yeah, for sure. Like I heard, Greg, I was listening to you talking to somebody today. You're like, well, why are 2x4 104 and 5/8 up $40 off of the low trade prices? There's no really 104 and 5/8 production to speak of that was affected in this market, right? And what this is really going to change, in my opinion, is how wood flows. I mean, we shipped some cars of Eastern MSR all the way to Arizona last week, right? I think that's just going to continue. You know why? 'Cause I got a little note. It has to continue because as all this Western production gets taken off, and for people that don't want to switch over to pine, they're going to have to pull it from longer distances, right?
Yep.
Well, that gives us an opportunity with pine to go north, honestly, in the Midwest and up the Eastern Seaboard with a little bit more velocity is the goal, honestly.
Yeah.
Charles, has there been any change in the pine market in the last 24 hours?
24 hours, no. I mean, it's been kind of weird, kind of push and pull, give and take. I mean, you got some big boys and some dealers that have stepped in and bought at some discounts over the past 7-10 days. And, just like Ash said, I mean, that counter, depending on what you're buying and the volume you're buying, may or may not be there. You got a 50-50 shot. And that makes things a little bit more difficult for the people that may buy once a month or once every couple of weeks. And, the big problem is that inventories across the Southeast are slim. So it begs the question, when does the other shoe drop?
The thing that really blows me away when I look at pine is, other than I think like 2x4 16s are a good value, but you go 2x4 10s and 12s and 2x6 dimension, 2x8 dimension. I mean, 2x6 and 2x8 are still dirt cheap.
Well, I mean, 2x12 is dirt cheap. I mean, you look at 14 and 16 right. and two and better. I mean, I think print on 14 foot's $375. I saw some stuff that priced at print delivered. So it's still interesting in our world. And I mean, that 215 million foot coupled with what Interfor has done, I don't know how much of an influence it's going to have on our market based on the brown and the greenfield projects that have really come on board over the past 18, 24 months. You've got guys that spend a lot of money for a lot of production. And all it's going to do is change buying habits, right? So if you look at what Interfor did as far as their coastal South Carolina mills in central Georgia when they shut down Somerville and Meldrum, and then you've got Estill at Canfor and Darlington. Darlington's kind of a Piedmont north or eastern mill. There's going to be less 4 and 6 inch across the board. And hopefully, some of those guys that have contracts and those mills are having to ship it from South Georgia or North Carolina or wherever it may be is going to have some appreciation effect on everything else. But I do think, if you look at multifamily, for example, I mean, plate 12 and longer, guys are going to prefer 14s and 16s at the price point they're at now. Honestly, if you had a choice, your max yield is going to be a lot better and your downfall is going to be a lot less, and you don't have to handle it and use it for blocking. So there's some things that are going on that are kind of hindering any sort of pine run, but I think the future is bright for sure, because you've got a scenario where Eastern spruce, to quote Ash, is going to Arizona. Well, that's wood that's not going to be consumed in Indiana or Ohio or Northern Virginia or Maryland. So who's going to fill that gap? We're going to have to step up and fill that gap. And once we pick up that demand at scale, you should see appreciation and upward momentum. The question is when. Supply-driven markets are very, very, very difficult to trade. Very difficult.
So do you think 2x6, for instance, somebody was telling me the other day, 2x6 pine seems to be the first one to go way up and the first one to come way down. I don't know if that's true or not, but
everybody has their own perspective.
They have their own perspective, right?
It depends on what items you're real heavy in, right? But if you look at the past 12 months, 4 inches done that. 12 inches done that.
So is
6 and 8 inch Hasn't.
Is 2x6 going to have a 2 handle on it through the end of the year, or are we going to be waking up in the back half of the fourth quarter and see like a 4 or a 5 on these numbers?
I would say you have a higher chance of a mid to high 3 number on a 6-inch.
Okay.
What's 2x6? What's 2x6 yellow pine good random selling for FOB a mill right now in yellow pine?
$270.
That's $230 less than Doug fir or Hem Fir.
Isn't that crazy?
I can also cut a 2-6 Southern yellow pine stud and quote it FOB my plants at $385 to $390, and you got guys that are tripping over themselves to pay $640 for Canadian spruce. But hey, I don't know.
But let me look at that spread between spruce 6-inch and pine spruce 6-inch. It's crazy.
Oh, I mean, your delivered Carolinas on 6-inch spruce at what, $625 delivered end user, $615, $625 depending. So if I'm $415, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize you can save $4,600 a truck.
Hold on, slow down. I can't do the math that fast. Can we spell it out? I want to do longhand. 28.
Longhand. I quit doing that in elementary school, Matt. That's what we got calculators for, bro.
You got a TI 83 over there. You're just
yeah, I had to turn.
No, he's working. That's the Charles 10,000. He's working.
You said to my thing, like last nights, we all seem surprised when these announcements come out, but nobody's making money here. Southern mills aren't making money here. Yes, there's a lot of greenfield stuff going. There was a lot of CapEx put into stuff, but if numbers stay here, we're going to continue to see a drip, drip, drip of these curtailments, shifts.
I mean, Ash, so to talk about shifts, and I apologize for interrupting here, but if you look
that's what we do here, Charles. That's the way we.
I try to be a gentleman and a scholar, Greg. I try to.
Well, you're doing a good job being a gentleman.
You got me whipped on the math already. I'm still trying to figure out.
So, all right. So, Matt, think about it this way. If you're a 2-6-9 Canadian spruce 630 delivered Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlotte, right? And I can deliver to Charlotte, North Carolina in a Southern yellow pine at call it $415, right?
Yeah.
$420. So there's $200 spread there.
Is that
so? If I'm putting 23,040 on a truck, 23 times 200, quick math, $4,600.
My God, you're amazing. How did you do that?
I'd have to show you all my tricks, but they're cloaked in secrecy, my friend.
Oh, that reminds me of a joke from Step Brothers. It was like magic.
Well, I mean, but I think part of
you have the voice of an angel. You sound like Fergie mixed with Jesus.
Part of the reason why multifamily is just not as strong. I mean, we've seen it's down 40% from last year, and it. That's my big question. I look at the overall market and, hey, we're in a supply push market and, all the mills are losing money. And what's going to happen now, we made a cycle low in July. And now every time the market sets back, it'll set back to a level not as low as it was before, because everybody can lose money for a while, but nobody can lose money forever. And so the wild card becomes, have we cut enough that and at the current level of demand where we're out of balance, right? And that's Charles is shaking his head. For all of your listeners out there that can't see Charles, he's shaking his head right now. And I asked it as a question, so I appreciate that. And so probably what we can expect between now and the end of the year is every time we set back. One of the big issues in Eastern Canada is there's going to be a significant amount less lumber made, partly as a factor of log supply. If you think back 12 months ago, we were at the tail end of massive fires in Eastern Canada, and they started cutting right about now burn timber at a significant discount, which is why we saw Eastern prices, go at discounts and keep a lot of pressure on prices in the first, 6 months of this year. That's all done now. And so there's going to be a lot of the dynamics are a lot different with them not having to cut that.
Well, and this is where decisions are being made this time of the year, Matt. I mean, look at big Canadian mills in the Pacific or up in Canada, and out west, this is the time they have to decide whether they want to spend the money on building a log deck, right, for the winter.
Well, there's two things I want to touch on here that we've been talking about. One of them is the Canadian, specifically British Columbia production drop. And I want to remind people it's self-inflicted. It's a political decision by the people of British Columbia. They elected that government, and that government is hostile to timber. And if you want to see the results of those policies, just come to Oregon. I'll give you a tour around the state, and I'll show you how the meth towns and the shuttered, dilapidated places that used to have thriving economies and workers.
Is that like some sort of special kind of tour that is being set up?
It's the tour of garbage. It's like, look, dude, if you want to see what bad forest policy does for your forests and your towns, just come on over to Oregon. I'll show you all the burned timber that never got processed, that just got left there because we don't manage the forest anymore since nobody's harvesting, right? All the federal forests, there's only like 10% of all the timber processed in Oregon comes off of federal land. The other 90% of it comes from private timber or some state holdings. And even the state is really trying to limit the state harvest over the years. They just keep trying more and more. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to export logs to Asia and leave and send those jobs over to Asian countries. You're just sending raw material, right? They're going to work on that log when it gets there, as opposed to keeping that log in Oregon like British Columbia used to do. And they process the log and they get the labor and tax benefits in their own public coffers. So British Columbia is making a fatal mistake, and all they have to do is just come on south to Oregon, Washington, and see the results of those policies. We're 20 years ahead of you. I'd be happy to give you guys a tour. If you work for the Canadian government, come on down. I'll give you a tour. The other side of the coin I want to talk about is lowering of the interest rates, and we all see it coming. I think a 30 years at 6.2 or something like that right now. It's way down. And according to one of my mortgage lender buddies who owns the company, he thinks it's going to come down even more, and he's pretty bullish on housing, on both new home starts in 2025 and multifamily, because everyone talks about how we've been underbuilding for all these years. So the math is going to start to look a little bit better for developers and all the people that are interested in building new homes. I think that that's the wild card.
I'm going to challenge him on the new home. And the reason I'm going to say that is, we look at this year, the higher interest rates, they haven't had that big of an impact on new home construction and sales. That's held up and is actually up year to date. Why? Because the big national builders are discounting their mortgage rate to move homes. We did it the other day. There's all sorts of communities where you can have 4.5% mortgage rate to buy your new home. The problem in the marketplace is multifamily down 40+%, and repair and remodeling, which we've had the numbers up there are saying they're like the last economist we had, I think, was saying it was they're figuring it's down 6%. Is that right, Ash? Is that the right number, or did I just make that up again?
Well, I think you're close. So,
I look at three legs of the stool: single family, multifamily, and repair and remodeling, and it's that are the issues, not single family. I don't think the market's going to get helped on the demand side by single family much.
Well, if we're looking at today's prices, if I called you up, Greg, said, hey, I want you to quote this apartment job for me, and it starts in February, it's going to end in April, and I need these 40 cars of 9-footers, and I need some OSB, and I need some.
Yeah, I quoted Dallas today at. Hang on, stand by. I'll let you know what I quoted it at. It's a big number. It's
not 40 over today's price. It's not 10 over today. It's not even close to today's price.
No, it's massively over today's price.
So there, you just revealed what you think about the future.
2x4, 104 and 5/8, $745.
Yeah.
And what's the market today?
Not even close to that.
Right. Yeah.
But you and I and people that do that type of business for a living are not going to go 50 over for 6 months out. And in this environment, you're losing production. It's a steady drip of production. Doesn't matter if it's Oregon, Washington, California, Montana, Idaho, British Columbia. the South now is a victim of curtailments, and some of these projects may not ever start. I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's an air of reduction around our industry, and at the same time, there's also a bit of optimism when it comes to housing going into 2025. Now, I don't think that Canfor's deal is going to really change the market grossly between now and, say Christmas. I think it will help. It'll help your inventory that you have on the ground right now. It'll help the mills, that can cover stuff that Canfor can't
create
cover.
Liquidity. I agree. With that.
It'll just help. It'll just help in general. It'll help. Where I think it'll really have an impact is the first half of 2025, when people want to start bulking up inventories in anticipation of the building season. And that is when we're going to see, what really the effects of all these curtailments is.
Yeah, that's great. So my friend Ellen called today and said, "Hey, why aren't we at 600 yet?" And I'm like, well, buyers have not changed any way they're currently purchasing. They didn't today either. They're buying the minimal amount. They're beefing up any inventories. Like Matt, I think you were telling me one time that if somebody's only keeping 30 days of a specific SKU and they have 31 days, they get a call from corporate. Hey, get it down to 30 days, right? Like nobody's changed their habit on the way they're buying right now. And you know what? For what we do here, it's a great truck market. It is a truck market. I mean, people are not buying, for the most part, cars. I saw inquiry on cars today quite a bit, but I mean, I think people are just checking prices, and it's going to continue to stay a truck market until that changes. But if and when that changes,
it's seasonal, right? I mean, seasonally, the next 4 to 8 weeks is some of the weakest time of the year for price. Historically,
I'll counter you on that, though, Greg. I'll counter you on that, because if you look at outside of the last 2 years, the previous 5 years, August, at least for us, August going into September and all of September were gangbusters. And August.
You know what? I'm gonna take the 3 COVID years out of there, because that's.
Oh yeah, I'm talking prior.
Charles. I'm talking. You know what? I'm talking prior to that. Kind of like my memory of years like from 2000 to 2006 and 2012. When I was in high school, 2018 and 1980s. No,
I felt that one coming.
I was primarily talking about like 15 through like 19, mainly, right? I mean,
when you were still in high school.
No, I wish I
I think Gregg's point stands, though. I mean, typically, if you look at a long-term chart, seasonal weakness is in the fall and winter. And I was talking to a big retail guy that I sold a lot of lumber to for 30 years, and he was telling me yesterday, he said, our usage rate just drops by 10% or 20% in the fall and winter. It just does. And they're in a southern state where they don't get winter. It's 75 degrees at Christmas. So, maybe football season, hunting season, maybe just time of year, but there's going to be less lumber
daylight.
There's less daylight also.
Yeah. That's true too. I feel like we're setting up for the perfect storm, and that we're gonna keep making what's right. Way to say higher highs and higher lows. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah. But I think something's got to shock the market. I think something. I think the market is becoming immune to. Well, I'm taking production off. We're taking production off here, and here, and then not much changes after that happens, right? I think when Interfor came out with their curtailment, the board was down like $12 that day, right? I don't think the market is emotionally vested in that. So from my opinion, from what I see every day, something's got to change to where somebody begins making an emotional decision, whether it's FOMO, whether it's some fear of something changing in the future. And I don't know what that is.
You only make right? The emotion only comes into play, Charles, at the top and in the bottom. I mean, the rest of the time while we're in the middle, it's like if you're making decisions buying and selling lumber on emotion, you're probably not going to make great decisions.
I'm not necessarily saying, purely an emotional decision, right? But I mean, if you look at if you look at what happened today, and I think Ashton hit the nail on the head, there's a lot of people that are checking prices. They're seeing counters are out of the market, and nothing has dramatically changed from what it was 2 days ago or last Thursday, right? So what that does, and that's what I'm specifically talking about, right?
If we hadn't had that today, the market was weakening, and you were going to be down next week. Now, prices may be down again next week anyhow, but, there's a firmer undertone to the market right now just because people are looking at, hey, there's going to be less production.
Oh, I agree with that 110%. I'm talking about changing buying patterns.
How do you do that, Charles? You need fear. And the only way you're going to change buying patterns is fear of missing out or fear of not being able, running out of inventory. People need to get no quoted several times before that starts to happen.
Well, that's what I mean by emotion, right? That's what I mean.
And they'll go to their boss and say, hey, we can't just carry 30 days of inventory anymore because we're 30 days rail time away from the mills, and I'm having trouble sourcing this.
Or our takeaway increased 15% over the past 60 days, and 30 days worth of inventory is not going to really suffice for what we need to do, right? I think that's the other side of it too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a demand uptick, to kind of touch on what you said, Matt, as far as interest rates, whether it's multifamily or single family, that's going to come into play too. I don't think it's necessarily
the opinion that the price that the curtailments, permanent and temporary cuts and shifts, all that have happened over the last 60, 90 days and are going to happen over the next 60, 90 days, kind of has the market at equilibrium with the current level of demand. So the X factor is what's going to happen to demand. And we all agree that demand seasonally slows between now and Q1, right?
Yep.
So the support for the market is going to be at some point people's willingness to build an inventory / what's going to significantly improve demand between now and Q1.
That's what I'm getting at when I'm in emotion. You said it better than I did, but I guess that's what happens.
Well, you know what? We're here.
Based on your tip,
Charles, we're here together. It's it's collaborative. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine.
It's a safe space. There's no crying and buying and selling lumber.
Well, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And everything I hear over and over again from the Southern Pine buyers I talk to and the mills I talk to on pine just to get feedback at events, they all say, hey, the same people say the same thing. Let me know when you get past 3 weeks of ship time, then I'll start to worry. And nobody's gotten out past.
But pine mills never go past 3 weeks of ship time. They're off the market.
That's true. That's true.
Maybe even 2 weeks. Maybe even 2 weeks.
So let's look. Couple questions here. We're going into expiration now in September. So for all you people that just trade cash market, we're going to talk a little about futures here. Interesting timing going into the front month of this announcement. I saw a lot of EFPs being done today. What is going to happen with the September futures? Are they where was September at, boys, today when
September
we were
closed at
499
520
September, not
498.50.
So basically we're on cash, right? September has got a decent spread. How far is that spread going to get out in November?
It's current. I think the spread probably will go out to $40 or $50.
And the interesting thing we saw
I rolled today at 25, so I'm not that happy about that.
The interesting thing we saw, Matt, Charles, Gregg, last week was one of the first times the fund started getting short again on the commitment of traders. I'm guessing
for September or November?
November, it looked like. November, right? They started, but this is the first time they had liquidated. It started liquidating that big position for 6 weeks, basically. And we said on here, like, gosh, I wonder if they're going to come back in and take another kick at the cat being short. And they started last like a week and a half ago.
The thing you really want to look at is I think January could carry a $40 or $50 premium to November is sooner rather than later. The lumber prices are going to be highest. If there's any improvement in demand in 2025, that's where you're going to see it. Matt, you've asked me before this question. You said, Gregg, what do you think about, prices for the first half of next year or for next year? I'm going to say that I think that lumber prices will probably be able to average 30 to 50% higher in 2025 than 2024.
30 to 50% or $30 to $50 per
30
thousand?
to 50%.
Geez, that's bold, buddy. I like it.
It's a big number.
I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of it.
Are you talking across the board with pine?
I'm just looking at a situation where, we always overcut. We always overcut production, right? Just like,
well, you overcompensate on both sides of it. You either oversell or you every time.
And when we hit that tipping point, that if we all kind of acknowledge that the current prices are probably like 20% below break even right now, right? Is that fair number?
I think that's
depends on what you're cutting.
I think it's a good number just to throw out there for just overall.
Yeah, it's just like throw it against the wall. So saying that we're going to average above break even for next year.
Yeah, that's a big move. I mean, you're talking pine, spruce, everything, eh?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the other things I look at in pine is, I think pine's being held back a lot because of the fall off in multifamily. But the other thing is when you look at these price spreads, how many builders, and
that's a conversation that's got to be had. Is a change.
So how many builders are going to switch from spruce to pine because of the spread?
Well, you got to start shipping more Eastern Canadian to Phoenix, Arizona, and then we can have that conversation. But I would like to be on the forefront of those conversations to whoever's listening.
Well, once I start going into my
we can develop custom supply chain solutions for that scenario.
Once I start going into my local home center, like I did this week, to buy a grill, not for my teeth, for the deck.
Yeah, you come in wearing a grill, boy.
Right after he left the gym, Greg's going to have a lot of questions.
When are we going to start seeing Southern Yellow Pine, if it's a price thing, up at all these large home centers in the Midwest sitting around on deck, 2x4, 2x6 and all that? You don't see it in any of the home centers. It's cheap.
And see, it would do really well in the Midwest because the weather's cooperative towards it the majority of the time. Outside of 3 to 4 months a year, y'all get 90-degree weather.
I think we're gonna keep stair stepping up here. I like that. I mean, Matt, we were talking about third, fourth, fifth innings a couple of weeks ago. What inning do you think we're in this?
Well,
in this
if you'd
move?
asked me that on Tuesday, I would have said eighth inning because things were getting a little bit heavy. I mean,
it's a doubleheader, Matt. Right? That game's over. It's a new game. We're back in the first.
Yeah, no. So that
inning,
game's
right?
over. We're starting a new game. I think. Well, I don't know, dude. It's I'm gonna keep selling. And I've got plenty of wood to sell. I'm gonna try to gently nudge prices on the things that people want the most. And right now that's 16s, 18s, and 20s. Doesn't matter what width we're talking about. That just seems to be what everybody wants. 14s are pretty good. 12s are starting to get better. Did you guys solve your no grade stamp 12-footer problem yet?
Yeah, we just haven't talked about it.
Okay, well there you go. There's a sign.
No, we just haven't talked about it.
We're just gonna close our eyes and wait
there.
until we're gonna sell them at 500. You know what?
I solved my
Forget it.
problem.
This was
So
a
I'm out
deal
of the
where
way.
we were willing to give them away, and now we're like, hey, F it. We're gonna wait till we sell 500.
Well, hold on. Go back
500.
and repeat that. Say that again.
We're gonna hate sell them now.
I like the market, but I also don't think that.
There's sometimes where like the best thing you can do is, hey, when you try and hold on to something really tightly, it's hard. It keeps, like it's silly putty and it keeps falling out of your hands. That's the way these are with us. As soon as we're not trying to hang on to them, everybody's going to want them.
So it's funny, like, Matt, I was talking this market. I agree. I think I was beginning, like, the other day I go to Gregg, we have to have the show because I want to say how we bought 40 or 50 bucks under the market. And he's like, whoa, wait a second, big fella. Let's just wait and let's let this thing play out. So last night I'm like,
and then he said it.
so last night after this announcement, I was all like 40 foot tall and bulletproof, right? I'm like coming in and I was just,
you called me at 8:45 while I was putting my kid to sleep.
It's the strangest market, Matt and Charles. Like I felt like that young bull again, where you just want to run down the hill, and like I was keying up all the mills I wanted to buy stuff, and Gregg's leaning against my door, going, "Hey, we may not be going anywhere special in the short run here, not on CME, but on other stuff. And like, I was a little disappointed in some of the follow through today. It was okay, right? But it wasn't what I expected the movie that I was watching in my mind playing out, right? And we may not be much higher next week. We could be down a little bit next week, but I think the overall theme is we're still grinding up the hill right now.
I think I'm busier than you are right now.
You may be. You may be.
I feel differently than you do, Ashley. I've had a phenomenal day. We've had a good day over here as a company too. It's not just me, and I'm definitely thinking prices will be higher next week. Not lower. So I can see 1 week ahead, and right now 1 week ahead looks better than this week. But at the same time, I feel like, look, it's the fall. We're going into the winter. This is the seasonally lowest pricing point of the year. Typically comes in October, November sometime. I don't want to bulk inventory. I don't want to have, a whole bunch of inventory looking at my report on October 31st.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm content to just keep selling. And I think my customers are content to just keep buying what they've been buying and not really change their buying patterns. And that's fine. We might get another shock to the system. Maybe there'll be another spruce announcement here in the next week or two. I didn't expect this one. This one jolted people, and that's why we had such a giant rally in the futures board, because that's what happens when you get surprised, right? You get reactions. So I feel bad for the people that are losing their jobs. I feel bad for the companies that have to make these decisions. It's terrible. Terrible.
Absolutely.
I work for a producer. I know what it's like. It's not fun when you have to lay people off and shut things down. It's just somebody's life is changing for the worse. But I do think that that the market is just going to be, maybe we won't get that fall low this year. Maybe July will just end up being the worst of the worst, and we just kind of plow right through the fall, and nothing really goes crazy, but we just have a steady incline between now and the first quarter. First quarter, I think all bets are off.
You know how you can tell you're in a bull market and a bear market?
Let's hear it.
During periods of seasonal weakness, the market moves sideways or goes actually a little higher in a bull market. And then in periods of seasonal strength, it goes ballistic. And vice versa, in a bear market, during periods of seasonal strength, it maybe moves sideways or down a little. And seasonal weakness, it falls out of bed. Yeah. So, we're in this period here. So the thing to watch is to say, hey, what's going to happen between now and November is going to give you a big clue as to what the Q1 is going to look like.
Sure. Those are also like the seasons of your life, too.
We still got a big day in November 5th that we got to think about. This could change everything.
Yes, it could.
Charles, we can't hear you.
Is he on his...
I do want to say I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh, gotcha. We were reading your lips and trying to say what you were saying.
I saw you're talking to Morrow over there, huh?
But I do want to say, long term, I'm bullish. I really am. I think we're all on the same page that we're going to have higher lows and higher highs, right? It just is what it is because of the lack of availability. But I think I go back to how do you fundamentally change what people have been doing for the past 12 months? And I think it's a shock to the system at some point when somebody gets no quoted over and over and over again. And then they're like, oh no. And then takeaway increases, whether that's via interest rate cut or whatever the case may be. But the big thing for me is I think, I'm on the same boat that Gregg is. I think 25 numbers would probably be 30 to 50% higher than where we are today. Hold on. Whoa. There's an asterisk. If producers don't bring production back online.
Yeah, that's a big if, dude. In my entire career, I've continually joked about never underestimate the mill's ability to screw up a good market by finding new ways to produce more lumber. Now, I say that as a joke, right? But there's some truth to it. Because the mills that are around, they'll find a way to add hours. They'll work on Saturdays. They'll go double shifts. They'll do something. If they're making a real margin, then production will increase to try to catch up that. But I will say my final thought on the whole thing is that the market, I feel like for this year is pretty much already spoken for. We talked about this last January at the beginning of the year, we made our year-long predictions, and we had different predictions that mostly came true. And I told you guys I thought the second half of the year was going to be really weird. I just didn't want to make any big investments in the big. I was bullish on the first half of the year and confused about the second half of the year because of the presidential election and all the stuff that goes along with it. And then also just knowing that I felt like the economy was sort of facing some stumbles. And Brian talked about some of those stumbles against the consumer here in 2024. I think a lot of those things are going to be reduced. Like the stumbles to the consumer, the entry price of a new home in 2025 is going to be a little bit lower. And the people that wanted to sell their existing home that couldn't because they couldn't sell a $900,000 house with a 7.5% 30-year mortgage, they're going to list that house in the spring at 5% or 5.5%. And there's going to be some trading going on. There's going to be people out in the market looking for houses. It's going to be more back to normal. So I like 2025 the way it's setting up. I'm not anywhere near claiming prices are 30 to 50% higher than they are right now. But I do make the observation that of all the building materials that is used in a house, only lumber's down from the pandemic. The price of steel, concrete, labor, everything else is up 10 to 30%.
You're exactly right.
So lumber is the only thing that's relatively cheap per se right now compared to all the other building materials, and the cost of entry dealing with taxes and red tape with the local governments that have to permit the whole process and whatnot. So I'm bullish on lumber in general.
Westbury said 50% of the cost of the home is tied up in government red tape. Seems like a lot.
Codes.
Really? Is it that much? That's insane.
So what I'm hearing,
it's not structurally important. It's not structurally necessary.
What I'm hearing is two things here.
It's on all different levels.
So basically, the rest of 2024, this isn't advice, but this is just what I'm hearing from all of us. If you buy some of the undervalued items at a little bit higher rate than you're currently buying, you should be rewarded in higher prices as we move forward. And 2025, there's going to be less lumber available. And if we get ourselves into a situation where we are 30% to 60% up in price, how available is that wood going to be on the open market? Or are people going to have to start thinking of more contracts for those times for 2025?
I don't think anybody's going to talk about increasing contracts until something changes, honestly.
I feel like people are talking about decreasing contracts.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. They are. No, they are. They are.
I mean, I've had these conversations this summer, and people have told me, hey, we're looking at doing more open market stuff. Okay, that's fine too. I don't care either way. The wood's going to get to the market one way or another. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about a strategy coming into today where big players in the world that do contracts and VMIs, we're already thinking in 2025, we want to do less of that. We want to have our buyers do more day-to-day transactional business. We don't want to have as much committed lumber because it didn't really work for us.
It's just something else that's bullish in my mind.
That's volatility. You're just explaining what you're explaining.
People increase their contracts after the market's been up and it was tight, and vice versa.
So the way I look at it, though, is the opposite. So you've got all these curtailments that have occurred this year, and then now you have a really big one that just was announced yesterday.
Yeah.
And if I was sitting there analyzing the situation as a retail lumber company, I'd just be like, maybe I want to keep my contracts in place and maybe even nudge them up a little bit because of the idea that maybe it's going to be hard to buy that stuff in April of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if they decrease it into 25, you got the perfect scenario for volatility, right? And
yep.
Don't tell too many people, Matt, that I want them to get rid of their contracts. We have a lot of more people trying to crowd through a small door when everybody's trying to get out at the same time. So what advice does everybody have real quick for the home builders, remodelers, multifamily people that listen? Maybe stuff that their current brokers aren't telling them. I mean, what's some advice that they should be looking at for the rest of this year when pricing out jobs or holding jobs that they're already short on? Charles.
Pick me. First things first, when you get a price forward and it seems like the premium is unreasonable, please do the math on what it costs you to take it into a reload at today's cash price and then warehouse it and then truck it from said reload to the job. Because if you take all those numbers into consideration, you look at something comparable to a forward price premium 9 times out of 10, probably 9.5 or 9.9 times out of 10, a forward price premium is going to give you a cost advantage versus buying it cash, sticking it in reload, and trucking it again. Minimum hauls in the Southeast are on pine, call it anywhere from $22 to $26. If you warehouse something for 60 to 90 days, which is probably average, 26 plus $8 inside storage for 2 months, it's $42.
My advice would be buy everything in yellow pine that you can, because it's the cheapest thing on planet Earth.
Go buy a couple Morton buildings and just stuff them full of 2x6 and 2x8 and shut your eyes for 5 months.
I know a guy that can do that for you. We can figure that out. I got a friend.
Well, let's anybody want to
Charles?
Do I get a break on that storage rate?
I mean, I don't know. You still got it. Never mind. Yes, Gregg. Of course you do.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
Let's since we're 48 minutes into this, let's go up to our married date and dump segment. Finish up with that, unless anybody's got anything else they wanted to throw in.
Do it.
I'll go. If anybody wants to think about it, they can write it down while I'm talking here. So a couple things I noticed, Matt. Great observation last week on the number 2 versus the stud market and the different trims, and have seen that especially on the 8-footers and on the 2x6 8-footers. The number 2 market just seems really strong. I also noticed a lot of 2x3 inquiry. We make it at one of our mills, and I saw more 2x3 inquiry to a lot of truss facilities. I don't know if people are just trying to make less expensive trusses or designing them different, or they just realized I started selling some 2x3, but I saw more 2x3 inquiry on the short stuff we make. I think my Mary right now is anything in premium grades in stud or in 4-inch random 8 to 20 that I can buy close to regular 2 and better. And I like it, especially in 16s, because I really feel with Euro starting to not ship as much, and with some of these bigger mills curtailing or coming off, there's a lot less premium out there. And I've seen inquiries from people calling me saying, I want premium and I can't get Euro. What do you have in premium? So I want to buy more premium grades in 4-inch, especially 16s. Date, it's got a lot of momentum. It's the 2x6. I want to still date 2x6, 104 and 5/8 number 2 studs. I mean, they've been smoking in SPF. And Charles, I wish your Southern Yellow Pine would catch up. I'll try to push some of those, man. But I mean, you just can't get enough of 2x6, 104 and 5/8. And I also want to date 2x4, number 2, 5, 6, and 7 foot studs, because there's a lot of inquiry for that right now. Break up. I want to break up with anything that I buy that I know I shouldn't, that I never have liquidity on, and I don't know what customer it goes to, just because I think it should be cheap and I should buy it. At 50 some years old, I would always think I learned my lesson on that, but
you
need to divorce yourself from the PO book.
Exactly.
Yes,
I've got a good partner that keeps me in check on that stuff now. So that's kind of my 3. Who wants to go next?
Charles, go.
I don't know.
All right, I'll go.
I think you should go. I think you should go for. You should go, Beamer.
I'll go. I mean, hey. Yeah. So I'm marrying.
We'll let Charles back clean up. We'll let Charles back clean up today.
Yeah, we're.
Well, I mean, the broadest back has got to carry all the weight, Gregg.
I would say my back is a little broader than yours, Charles.
I don't know about that. You might be taller than me, but I've had to buy new shirts lately.
That's true. You've been taking the HGH. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, my hands are
growing. You see that? It's glorious. Holy cow! I'm so jealous.
You have a voice of an angel, Matt. You have a voice of an angel.
I'm because of the tariff increase in August in Canada and marginally better Asian markets for low grade. I'm just generally bullish on low grade lumber, short lumber, economy, number 3, utility. And some people even consider standard better to be a low grade SKU these days because so few people really buy it on purpose anymore. But I just think low grade in general is something I'm paying close attention to. And then, so I'm marrying that, I guess, just all low grade lumber. Doesn't matter what species it is, green or dry. Harder to buy, easier to sell. And then the stuff that I want to marry is the stuff or the stuff that I want to date is the stuff that I was marrying a month ago. And that's more 2x4 16s, 18s, and 20s, the things that people keep calling me for. Happy to date them. I'll keep spinning the hamster wheel as long as I can, and as long as it makes economic sense. And then the stuff that I want to dump is anything in my inventory like 2x4 8-foot number 3, where I have to buy some, and I don't like having it because nobody ever calls me and goes, "Hey, I need a truck 2x4 8-foot number 3." I get like 1 a quarter. So I want to take care of that stuff. The SKUs in my inventory that just sit. And I think as an inventory manager, you just have to do that once a quarter. You just got to purge yourself of those items that like you and I were talking about a month ago, Ash. We're talking about 2x4 12-foot number 3. Well, that problem's been solved. Now my next problem would probably be 2x4 8-foot number 3. And so that's what I'm going to focus on here for the next month. There we go.
Married. I'm still married to the same items. MSR spruce, 2x4 16s. I guess maybe I'm moving to the dating on 2x4 16s. The basis has come in tremendously on that, but I'm really expecting to see more relative strength on 2x4 16s. I mean, I look at what's happened to pine 2x4 16s. 60 days ago, pine was delivering at a discount to spruce. Spruce was a big discount to random. Today, spruce 16s are a discount to pine and are only, kind of quote unquote at the random price. Should be carrying, more like a 20 to, I think $20 to $50 premium is in line between now and Halloween. I'm dating, 8 and 9 foot studs. Liquidity is great. It's like, potato chips. I mean, you can't eat just one. And neither can the customers. I mean, these are things, if we go with the backdrop that basically customers have a lean inventory and they're going to stay that way, then they're in the market every week buying these products. And so, on a relative basis, you look at the price of them and it's not like there's a whole lot of market risk when you're buying, sub $400 delivered or, low $400 delivered lumber. Dumping, I mean, I already said I'm not dumping anything today. I'm in to win.
Because you're a genius. Greg.
No.
You said that earlier. It was a matter of genius why we bought it, right? I mean, I'm just piggybacking on your words. When asked something about question his manhood, you're like, no, I thought it was genius.
Charles, is the only way you make those buys is you buy all the time, every day.
That's it. You got to be in the market every day. You're 110% correct.
And the genius is you buy every day.
Yep. Marry, date, and dump. I am marrying all things Southern Yellow Pine and 2 and better. Low grade's real tight. Number 4 doesn't really exist. We've seen a lot of good takeaway in low grade pine. And I think that obviously has to do with some subbing on your number 3, 2x4 16 spruce in your southern plate markets. In addition to a little bit of an uptick in demand with the pallet and crate guys. So that's been solid. The 2x4 number 2, I mean, I think the last time I was on the show, I think prices for 14s and 16s are probably up $100. 12s and 10s and obviously 8s are 8s, and that is a retail big box item, and they stay strong. I mean, they stay decent, right? I should say, but 10s and 12s are still kind of weak. I feel like taking positions on some of that stuff and your longer lengths will probably pay dividends coming up over the next 90 days. The other thing that I'm obviously very, very bullish on is anything that you can arb Southern Yellow Pine trims against spruce. No offense, guys, or Doug fir. I mean, if you look at some of the price spreads in some of these delivered markets, whether it's Eastern or Western, I mean, it's astronomical. I mean, if you got a guy that's looking to save money, we can do it. We just got to have the opportunity to put numbers on it.
Yep.
And I also have my rally cap on if anybody.
Yeah, I saw that. I like that.
So
that's why I said I wanted to marry all yellow pine. It's $200 $1,000 cheaper than everything else. Can't ignore it.
Yeah. No, you can't ignore it. I'm not saying we're going to the moon, right? But I think the sentiment is 25 is going to be stronger. The tail end of this year is going to be better than the last 60 to 90 days were, right? Specifically in my species. And, you know,
Charles, 2x6, you know, if you're delivering somewhere in a warehouse, you know, sub $300 delivered.
On what?
On 2x6, like, you know, random, any length.
Yeah, I mean, if you're random 2x6, I mean, I think Matt asked that question earlier. You're probably 300 delivered.
Is that with paper?
Is it reasonable to expect that you could be selling that in the 500s delivered in Q1?
I'd probably say closer to the beginning of Q2, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
Delivered. I mean, but you got to key on 14s and 16s being in that mix though, right? I mean, that's going to be the telltale of the appreciation. And, you know, I know Matt kind of balked at a 30 to 50% price difference between 24 and 25. But I mean, if you look at a composite of 2x6 7 yellow pine for the year, I mean, we're like $300.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, $90 we're at $400.
Not a big deal.
I mean, that's not like earth shattering, right? Whereas spruce, if you're 50% at, you know, $500 delivered Carolinas or $550 delivered Carolinas, I mean, you're talking $750 wood. I mean, that's a lot of damn money. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from the western side because we're already up $100+ $1,000 from the lows of mid-July. We've already had a 25% move, and so it's going to be pretty heavy lifting to move at another 50%. You're talking about a 75% price appreciation from July 15th to mid-February, mid-March, something like that. Yeah.
So what was your composite mill price on dry dug fir? Number 2 and better 4-inch.
Dry dug fir.
Low end.
Yeah. Low 400s.
Okay, so let's call it 415, right?
Yeah, sure.
It's good stuff, guys. I love this, man. Great to have you. Great to have you on.
I think Gregg's patience are running out. He's ready to go play backgammon or something with his friends.
He's got golf.
No. I'm saying I'm going back to the salt mine. I got work to do, boys.
Ice Vente Americano, Gregg, on the way back.
All right. See you guys next week.
All right, boys. Good to see you. Thanks a lot, guys.
See you, Charles.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.